Hi friends, welcome back to fourth episode on Workplace Performance Enhancement. In the third episode, we discussed about mindfulness. Mindfulness for enhancing our performance on continuous basis. We took valuable inputs and interacted with Mr. Bhavesh Karya on mindfulness. We are thankful to him for sharing his knowledge and wisdom with all of us. Today we are going to discuss something which is very important, very crucial to enhance our performance beyond expectations on continuous basis. That is performance measurement, performance discussion and performance review. We will be learning and we will be discussing on these three topics with someone who is well experienced in HR. We will be interacting with Dr. N. Suresh Kumar, who is Vice President HR at JSW Infra, and Mr. Karan Gandhi, who is GM HR at JSW Infra. So let us go and talk with both of them. So let me give you a brief idea about Dr. Suresh sir. He is an MSW and he has done PhD. He started his career with one of the eminent PSU, which we believe that they have contributed a lot into organization development of our industry in our country. So he started with NTPC, am I right, sir?
Thank you.
Right. And he would be having more than 27 to 28 years of experience in HR. So we will understand from him and we'll understand from Karan Gandhi sir also. So he is a BE Electronics and he is MBA in HR from NIMS, one of the leading institutes of our country. So let's start, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Dinesh. Good afternoon to all of you. Good afternoon, Karan.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Well, you have thrown a very interesting topic of performance management. Performance management, first of all, let's take one step back as to how it evolved. Okay. See what was there. See, any place when you work, even let it be a small proprietor shop.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, when some employee is working for a master, okay, there will be at the end of the day some expectations of the master from the servant.
Absolutely.
If it's a servant-master relationship.
Yeah.
Or if there is any, we call worker or an employee vis-a-vis the shop owner. So there will be some expectations.
Mm-hmm.
So when there are expectations, whether those expectations are delivered or not,
Right.
when you appraise that, when you assess that, it becomes a performance appraisal. So now comes the thing of a little bit, let's get into the organization life cycle.
Right.
When I'm talking here organization, I'm talking primarily of the business organizations, which have all the workers or employees who are all having a common objective, supposedly to have a common objective, which is again based on the principles of organization getting divided based on division of labor, which again becomes functions, department, divisions, and each of them have their own targets and all of them try to achieve that particular organization's goals.
Right.
Okay. So till about, if I'm right, prior to 1970s, particularly in Indian context, to the extent that I know, we had a performance appraisal which was more like a confidential thing, barring organization within 1970s. Why I say companies like L&T, companies like BHAL, companies like probably State Bank of India also started throwing up performance appraisal in a most slightly more open manner.
Okay.
Wherein roles and responsibilities of people were discussed. So prior to that, it was primarily a confidential appraisal wherein somebody was performing a particular job or a role.
Okay.
Things were measured more on attributes.
Okay.
Attributes
of
behavioral characteristics.
Okay.
Now came, this was sometime in the 1960s and 70s in the US. It started off as a competency, also started off, and then from performance appraisal, they also from a closed system wherein people were not aware as to what performance they were doing. Only at the end of the year, something linked to performance appraisal could be promotion, could be the yearly salary raise, or which we call as increments.
Right.
Were done. But subsequently, post 1970 in western part of the world, particularly USA, here in our country, post about mid 90s, we started throwing up this performance appraisal a little more open.
Okay.
Calling it as a performance management.
Right.
Now, performance appraisal was one side focused. So
Okay.
there were expectations from the bosses, but which were not disclosed in full to the employees. And then
Yeah.
what is the feedback which was there
Hmm.
in terms of improvement was not conveyed to the employees.
Acha.
Then came in mid 90s and early 2000.
Hmm.
Most of the organizations, okay, they started adopting this performance management model.
Okay.
So which had basically, from an evaluation perspective, it went a twofold change. Continuing with the practice of appraisal, which is a tool for assessment
Right.
of the appraisal of a person or how he or she is doing in a particular year or a given performance cycle. Besides that, also into the aspect of what is the kind of developmental feedback,
Absolutely.
what is that which will be together being done, okay, for the employee to better the performance.
So what are the inputs
Okay.
required for
Required
that
for the
desired
performance. So,
result for the
so that
master?
is why the word managing the performance game. Okay, when you said managing performance, then it's a two-way process,
Right.
whereby the expectations in terms of what are the, emphasis areas. Okay, again we talk of two things generally. I'm slightly not getting structured in when I'm saying this. We will often hear the word KRA.
Right.
Sometimes we hear the word KPA.
KPI.
KPA.
KPA. Okay.
KPA. Okay. So key result area and key performance area.
Performance area.
In the key result area, generally in the performance management terms, it is the outcome which is measured.
Outcome which is measured.
Outcome which is measured. In
Yeah,
the key
yeah.
performance area, it is the efforts which are captured.
Right.
Efforts which are captured. If the results may be there or not there, but in terms of key performance area, what are the efforts put in by the person?
Okay.
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 Then when the results are there, it is then added to that. So,
Right.
but most of the organizations go by care because we are living in a business world wherein things have to get the results. If the desired outcomes are not there, the organization is not able to move ahead.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Again, then you have some things like it's a key performance indicator as to what constitutes that achievement of the key results area.
How to measure it?
How to measure it, and what are the indicators?
Indicators of those.
Key performance indicators.
Yeah.
If supposing we talk that this machine is to be repaired in 6 hours time, what are the kind of indices I'll have? If I talk for all set of machines in a particular shop floor,
Right.
the 6 hours should be the mean time to repair. If that is the MTTR, mean time to repair of 6 hours, what are the kind of constituents which will go into it?
Okay.
So those major constituents will be called the KPIs. Okay. Now coming back again to performance management. Performance management, what happens generally is you have a feedback given to the employee in terms of
Right.
his,
Yeah.
certain. Here the attributes slightly take a bigger turn. As I told you, 1960s, the world of competency started evolving. So what are those competencies on which the person needs to develop or is performing very good?
Right.
Which are again mapped for that particular role, which are identified. In competency, generally we use the term mapping of competency.
Mapping
We
of
don't say
competency.
identifying competency.
It is mapping with roles and responsibilities.
Mapping, because it is not that one single point. It's a kind of contours are there for that
Right,
particular requirement. And similarly, what are the deliverables for that role in terms of hard tangible things?
Right.
Okay, which are called the KRs.
Yeah.
So that's what the performance management and performance appraisal cycle. So I'll leave it at this. I'll request my colleague Karan Gandhi to
Yeah.
speak on this.
Karan sir, please, your views on that, on this.
So, I mean, I'm very, very enriched today to hear the history of when the competency started and when everything started, because obviously, but sir very rightly said that, an ongoing discussion is what makes the entire thing is performance. You're managing the performance not just of yourself, but then at the end, it's a business unit that you're working for. And I believe that anything that happens as a top-down approach in every organization.
Right.
So even right from the CEO or chairman or managing director level, percolating it down to the organization, that would be part of the entire performance management as well.
Yeah.
Of course, things are very different nowadays because we know the Gen Z and whatever terminologies we use for the people who are passing out right now from their MBAs or graduation. They are not the kind of people who would expect like a performance discussion once a year or once a 6 months.
Okay.
They are the generation of social media. They are a generation of instant everything, instant Maggi noodles, abhi bola to abhi chahiye.
2 minute
There is no
action.
patience.
Okay.
So kind of performance management today is a very ongoing thing, is very important in today's day and age.
Yeah.
You cannot even wait for quarterly, I would say. You have some feedback today,
Yeah,
give it today, and those people are very much open to give you feedback right away.
Right away.
They will not think that he is my supervisor or he's at this level or that level. They're very open and they expect very open feedback. While yes, organizations are following the formal patterns, but the way it is done is very different today than what it was 20 years before, and
Absolutely.
it will, I'm sure, change
Yeah.
going forward.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
that's why when even Suresh had mentioned that earlier it was more of result, but for result you need to have inputs, and for inputs you need to tell people what has to be the development. So because of this, there is a kind of confusion, and we have seen that, as you mentioned, that,
Yeah.
informal, formal, developmental initiative in the form of giving feedback, and if I add into it, coaching, mentoring, and all those things are there. But how would you know that what kind of coaching is required, what type of mentoring is required? So I think there is something which is developing these days, which is called performance discussion. I've seen that in many places there is a confusion between performance discussion and performance review. So what do you think? Because you have been into this kind of and the system of doing performance discussion and performance review. So what is the difference and what is the relevance?
Okay. Performance discussion is a very ongoing process in the sense that, let's take in a particular month, certain goals are to be achieved by the function.
Right.
Okay, when the various sub-functions are to achieve particular targets for any given project or even ongoing activities.
Right.
So when there is an ongoing discussion between the boss or the superior and the team member, I would say subordinate,
Right.
team member and the team leader, that is a performance discussion as to, things are being done very well or things are taking a particular course, but probably certain further enhancement is required. If not enhancement, what is the kind of channelizing of that course of actions are required?
What small changes are
small
required?
changes? That's an ongoing discussion.
Yeah.
It is nothing like, if I have to draw a small parallel, the discussion between the class teacher or the teacher in the class or the
Right.
tutor in the tuition room and the pupil or the student.
That's a great
So that's
comparison. Right.
So it's an ongoing discussion. So those discussions are not always review. So teacher writes a board on the board some things and asks or certain things are to be jotted down and they discuss on the subject. That is performance discussion. So there is no element of any kind of assessment in this.
Assessment. Right. That's right.
First of all, in the element of performance review, the periodicity, as Mr. Karan had said, could vary depending on the needs.
Yeah.
Okay, and as he said, nowadays we have come to that instant gratification type of a culture, which is rightly so, because each of us require at the end of the day some kind of approval, some kind of recognition, some kind of reinforcement to see that we are in the same right course of action. Hence, these reviews are to be done as frequently as possible. But yes, normally speaking, in an organizational life, with the work progressing, at the same time, how much times can you review? Because then what happens? Process importance takes more than the work per se. Okay, execution of work per se. So that periodicity one can determine depending on needs. Okay. So if you have to institute, as he said, informally it can go on, but as a formal mechanism, each organization can take its own thing. Probably, to my mind, quarterly would be a good way.
Right.
Okay. As to where the course corrections are required, or where further resources are required, or where further kind of support is required for the team member, or is there any change in the external environment which is impacting the organization system.
Right.
Okay. So those kind of dialogues. But in performance discussion, as I told you, it's an ongoing thing about the work. Okay. The team member may have certain clarities to be sought from the team leader, and team leader again may seek some clarification from the team member, so that each of them is not working in a very typically individual contributor role. There will be overlaps, there will be interfaces, a lot of that. Hence, performance discussion will be an ongoing process.
Absolutely. So I think performance discussion will tell you exactly what kind of intervention is required as far as performance enhancement is concerned. So it is like we should always think beyond bullshit also, right? When people are more focused on let me complete my bullshit. But bullshit is just one type of parameter which says that this is what duty, this is your duty, you have to complete it. But there are something which is called unsaid roles and responsibilities, wherein adding into organization ecosystem and adding into the industry ecosystem becomes very important. For that, you need to think beyond bullshit, and a performance discussion is a tool which will, I'm sure, help people to identify what are the inputs required to act beyond bullshit, right? So for that, I think I wanted to actually know the difference between performance discussion and review, and we have rightly mentioned that PD is an ongoing kind of process, and performance review is more of like assessing what a person is required to do. And you rightly mentioned that frequency of performance discussion will be an ongoing kind of thing. It cannot happen like once in a month or once in a week. Now, this is what an organization, the supervisor, the managers has to do. But as an employee, we also have some responsibilities towards performance, right? It's not only our bosses or our supervisor who will take care of it. Now there is a term which is called performance measurement. So as you mentioned that you have to review your own performance. So what do you think? What is your opinion on this thing which is called performance measurement? This is what I call. Yeah, and different people will have different terminology for that. So what is your opinion on efforts from the employee side to measure his performance on a regular basis? And what should be the frequency? How you should be doing?
How serious each employee is about their career. It is of course part of career management, but if an employee is really serious, he will be proactive enough to even go back to the manager to seek feedback, even though sessions may not happen quarterly or monthly or whatever. Right. Because right nowadays it's the time and era of an overall personality development, and not, of course you have your KRAs and bullshit as you mentioned, and you are measured on that. There is no doubt, but coming along with it, functional competencies, coming along with it, behavioral competencies, more than everything else, attitudinal, how is the person's attitude. So all these things will be combined. So we cannot, say that it's going to be the same yardstick for every employee. But I would say the people who really shine and prosper in their careers are the ones who are serious enough to have their own improvement standards and say that okay, these are the things I need to improve upon, and take that positive or proactive feedback from their managers and work towards it.
That's right. So when I conduct trainings, people quite often ask that boss ko kaise manage kare, right? But I think that's very easy. I mean, Gandhi sir rightly mentioned that proactively go and seek feedback from your bosses, how you are doing, what are the inputs required, where I need to improve myself. I strongly believe that performance measurement should become a habit. It should be like and it's very easy. I mean, you have 7 to 8 KRAs, not more than. You go and ask feedback from the boss. Where do I stand on these 7 to 8 kind of KRAs? Hardly takes any time. I mean, you can put it on your soft board also, and just like Kanban board, you can tick on that. Today I'm here. Today, this is what is the gap, right? So I think performance measurement.
Here I would like to say one thing. Sorry for interrupting you. See, the level of the role in the organization hierarchy also determines to a great extent. Probably in the lower middle management and the front line, you can probably delineate very much the KRAs or the goals. Okay, but as you go higher up in the ladder, probably the KRAs will get smudged.
Yeah.
Okay, you can't have very determined. End of the day, what is the KRA getting derived from? It is getting derived from that organization's goal for that particular performance appraisal year,
right,
or that particular measure, that performance like in our case, generally it is financial year. That organization's business goals will determine one. Number two, most importantly, at least let me say I for one, will say that role determines a lot the KRAs. For example, now, let's take a very broad example. Now, Prime Minister. Now, one Prime Minister comes, he does the same role differently.
Right.
The other prime minister comes, he does it differently.
Differently.
Socio-economic, political conditions of the country are different at different points of time.
Right.
But he or she shapes that in a very different way. Okay, so that role also determines the KRA to a great extent.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
the organization throws up the KRA for the person with the help of the reporting manager, as he said, or with the help of the superiors, and the person also perceives to some extent.
It's
That this is what
proactive,
this is
yeah.
what role. So the goals of the KRAs could be KRA 1, KRA 2, KRA 3, KRA 4. But apart from that, for the given role, is the person delivering to the extent possible or not?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's
End of the day,
enough,
it is the role delivery which is more important.
Right.
Like I am a project manager for a civil construction area, example. So am I maybe in terms of talking to the contractor or getting the drawings and aligning things may be there. But certain other interfaces may be required in terms of managing the external boundary, government officials and others. If I am not able to do that and my project is getting impacted, despite all those hard tangible facts, I am probably not delivering the carries
Right.
to
And
the
that
extent
is-
that is there.
I'm not fulfilling my roles in that case.
Yeah. So somewhere the element of KRAs has to be linked to the roles as well.
Yeah, it has
Okay.
to be.
And everywhere you cannot possibly at higher levels where the impact on the organization is higher, you could quantify it in so clear way.
Yeah, it is.
It is not possible.
Not possible. Absolutely.
Okay. Everything is not, yes, they say that what cannot be, what should I say, measured cannot be managed. It's correct. But there are, measurement comes later. But first is the feeling of it, whether it is done or not, or the perception of it.
Absolutely.
So that's important.
So I mean, see, as and when you go up in the organization ladder, as you rightly mentioned, it is you don't have to see only for the figures. Something we these days say something like inclusiveness has to be there. Now, when we want to measure inclusiveness, it is something very difficult.
Very difficult.
Very difficult. I mean, I cannot say that
Diversity can be measured,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
inclusiveness cannot be.
Inclusiveness is
Very
something
difficult.
which is not-
It's a culture. It's a felt
It's a
element.
culture,
It's a
yeah.
felt element.
So a CEO has to be inclusive in nature, and that has to be there in his thought. So as you rightly mentioned, I cannot go and measure his thought that what he is
That will
thinking.
come out only through surveys and
Survey.
climate surveys and some other kind of opinion polls or something like that, which can come, which cannot be part of the typical performance management system.
And these kind of things takes time. I mean, it is not like immediate kind of result will come that he has inclusiveness and that's why company were able to grab market globally and all those things. So it takes time, and measuring those things is something which is But I would say that as and when you climb up in the organization ladder, something which is called your contribution towards the industry, your contribution towards the society becomes more important.
Very important.
Okay, and that is where something called culture, inclusiveness, and all those things which plays a
Because
very
organization is part of the larger
important
ecosystem.
role. Absolutely, and that starts from the how you have been brought up in the organization, how you have, as you rightly mentioned, how proactively you have taken care of your performance.
And
So it
exactly
starts
said.
from there.
It's all part of the career management of one's own self also.
Absolutely. So great insight on performance management, performance discussion, and performance review. Last thing, if you have any message, Karan sir, Suresh sir, if you want to convey any message on performance management to employee community as a whole, so you can just any one.
I would say to the employee community, I would say to the world of business and world of management, to make it as scientific as possible. The reason being, end of the day, there could be subjectivity. The thing is, how do we minimize those subjectivity? Okay, whether it is on the measurement of the competencies, which we may call as functional technical competencies, and the executive or managerial or leadership competencies, and similarly on the key result areas. How measurable, how scientific you're going to make it in order to enable the measurement process, so that you're able to face the employee upfront for a developmental feedback, or you're able to upfront give him a positive pat that you have done very, very nicely. So that how much can you quantify those things? Okay. And similarly, when talk nowadays we have values also. Values, we have a displayable behavior, demonstrable behavior. So to that extent, how do you make it scientific and some kind of performance logs, or
Right.
performance diaries are there,
Mm.
can
Right.
enable in middle.
That will
Because
be very
otherwise,
helpful.
what happens is after every performance, what should I say, review, there could be, when people are not able to see that their perception versus the actual outcome is
That is
the
right
gap.
word you have used, right?
Yeah, perception
Yeah.
is, I feel that I've been an outstanding performer as an employee A, whereas the organization feels I've not been.
Right.
That gap, when it increases without the organization able to give a valid input, then it vitiates the environment. The organization culture somewhere gets
Yes, yeah.
disturbed. So we need to minimize that, and also make people understand that these are the roles, these are the kind of which we expectations from the role. That also needs to be
Very much clearly
clear.
mentioned, and a person has to clearly know what is required
Yeah,
from him. And
exactly.
I say that there are said roles and there are unsaid roles. Both of them are very much
very,
important.
very.
Everything will not be written.
Lower the level, probably more things can
More
be
things will be
clearer.
done, yeah,
But
clear.
as the person, tries to become a function leader or a departmental leader or a, unit level leader or plant level, it cannot be so clearly laid down. There would be carriage, but there are other things as well.
Other things also.
Yes.
And it's like, in this, complex and ambiguous world, things change, which is a lot. I mean, it is like, today your business market would be something else and tomorrow it could get changed. So you
We are living in a very,
very
volatile,
dynamic
world.
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 Absolutely. Yeah. So Gandhi sir, your views.
So I agree with sir on being more scientific and having the right ways to measure performance. Definitely I agree with him. Only one message to the community would be, at the end of the day, let's not forget that we are all humans. Even when you're sitting into a performance management discussion, if you are a manager, don't forget that the person in front of you, who is an employee or your subordinate, is also here to build his career. Not that he or she doesn't wish to perform. Maybe he's not got the right situation, not got the right environment. The proper situation at home might be adverse, or whatever. Have a little empathy, because at the end
Very
of the
important.
day, the relation which you build with your subordinate or your manager is going to matter a lot in terms of performance management discussions, because just by meeting once in 6 months or once in 12 months, that ice will never break. So let's have a human connect. Let's all not, HR is human resource at the end of the day.
Right.
And somewhere with these processes, policies, technology, development, we've become so, we want everything so standardized that we have to come back, we've forgotten to come back to the basics. And let's come back to the basics of being human.
Right.
And that's when I think everything will fall into place.
Yeah. So we can say that from performance reviews, discussion has to happen with the human angle, and everyone needs to have empathy, be it manager or be it subordinate. Everyone has to have that kind of wear the cap of being a right human being. Yeah. So it was really.
Two more things I would like to say here. Performance management has to be really embedded in the culture of the organization, because otherwise people may think they are just coming and going.
Yeah.
Okay. That culture of providing the developmental inputs and also the providing the kind of support, as you said, be it in terms of human, other support is required so that the person is able to deliver better.
Right.
And end of the day, human resource management function is just an enabler of the process.
Enabler,
It's just a kind of, what should I say, record keeper, if I have to put it very, very bluntly.
Absolutely.
The line managers or the respective business line managers are responsible for the performance management.
Absolutely. We are just a facilitator.
HR is just kind of a hand holder. That's all. Nothing more than that. Okay. HR cannot be the owners of the process. They are not the owners of it. They are just a tool to get this process accomplished.
Yeah. So, thank you very much for your precious time, and
Thank you.
more important was your very important and useful insights which you have given, and sharing your experience and your ideas for the betterment of employee community. So thank you very much.
Thanks a lot for
Thank you.
having
Thanks a lot. Thank
thought
you.
us fit to participate in this topic.
Thanks a lot.